twisting through 7 suns of gold, and the gypsy was insisting that his starry
So I am very honored today that we have a really special person on the Soberful podcast. I've been after her for a while, and it is the one and the only Dawn Nickel from She Recovers. Welcome,
Aw.
Dawn.
Thank you, Veronica. You're too kind. You're too
Well,
kind.
you are a leader in this movement that has just emerged, really, and it's quite incredible where we. If you, I mean, I know you've been sober a long time, like I have. It's quite incredible, really, where we were 20 years ago to where we are now.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, well, 35 years ago for me, right? When I came in
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
doors into recovery. So it is. And in many ways, I say on one hand, it's kind of an accidental movement. I mean, She Recovers is certainly an accidental movement. I never intended, and Tara never, my daughter never intended for She Recovers to become a thing like it has. But in another way, it's work like that you have done, and our friend Jean McCarthy and Julie Elton Height and others who've been around for kind of a really long time, very intentionally trying to change the landscape of women's recovery. So it's kind of it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, was this intended to happen from my perspective? Not so much. Is it brilliant that it has? Absolutely.
So I want to talk. Let's talk about you, Cubs. I want to talk about your book, but I want to talk about. I want to kind of like. So Miami finally happened, which was wonderful. I rave about the big events. I tell all my people about them because they're, for me, they're so much fun, and I really want
Yeah.
like my clients. I want them to experience like just a fun weekend where you have, well, you know, the connection is so much deeper. You know, you know what it's like, and you know, so many times I have clients or people from my circle there, and they kind of walk around with this just like slightly kind of like their brains are literally forming new neuro pathways while I watch them because they're like, I had fun last night and I was sober. And you can see like their brains are going, well, this is a new
Yeah.
calculation. So I love them for those events. But tell me from the inside, what was it like with Miami? Because I remember messaging you in the March of 2020 going, don't cancel it, it'll be
I
fine. We'll all wear masks. We'll all wear masks. And then I can't imagine the stress of that.
Well, I remember you do. I remember your email well, and I remember that you were going to be celebrating 20 years when we were
Yeah.
in Miami, so it was going to be a big deal.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were in just such denial in the beginning. You know, I
Yeah.
remember it was actually Dara, our one of our event producers, who said, like, very soon after COVID was kind of coming up, you know, we're gonna have to cancel this. And it's like, oh, for heaven's sakes, we've got weeks before Miami. Everything's going to be fine. And then as things changed, and it was very stressful. I mean, I don't know any event producers listening, it's not that easy to convince a hotel that you can't actually go forward with an event. And it was even more difficult to convince a hotel in Miami, in Florida at the time, that, you know, we can't because of COVID. And finally, um, you know, the hotel itself has figured out that it was going to have to close down, and we were able to postpone it till 2021.
Yeah.
And then just kind of held our breath to wait, and started thinking about, you know, we have to move all of our guest speakers forward. And some people definitely like really wanted to cancel if they couldn't come in 2020. They already couldn't come in 2020. So Peyton Kennedy for sure bore the brunt of all of the really hard work. And we're just forever grateful to her for all that she has done behind the scenes and continues to do. 2021, we made the same decision fairly early, I think in about January at least, which was better
Yeah.
than the end of March and April. And then we again just waited to wait and see. And then when we made the call, I don't remember even exactly when we made the call. We just knew, like, we're doing this. We're doing this unless somebody tells us we can't get on an airplane, because we're Canadian as well. So we had that whole thing.
That's why
As
you're
long
so
as
nice, Canadian.
Thank you. We just thought, you know, we're going to go forward, and we did ask that everybody show a negative test, which we felt was a responsible thing to do. And it was amazing. It was, I think, in large part because there had been so much anticipation about this event, especially for people who had joined us earlier for She Recovers in New York City and She Recovers in LA. And so they knew what it was going to be like, and they really craved that after so many years of isolating. And then for the newer people too, I think maybe they had a little added extra layer of stress with the whole COVID thing going on. But you talk about people having fun, and I think that that's certainly a really big deal on our weekends. It is fun, but I think it's kind of that and a little bit more. It's so much about what I see people early in recovery catching on to is not only is it fun, but like they should be proud and they should
Mm,
celebrate, and it's really something to celebrate
mm,
that this many people can get together and they meet other people who are telling their stories. So it's just so many things rolled into one, right? And we knew the first time we held She Recovers in New York City that these events were going to be something else. And to be honest, like they're a really big job. It's a lot of work, and it for not a lot of profit, certainly not profit when we were a business, and now that we're a nonprofit you have to show even more profit, which is just so weird about nonprofits. How you have to show more profit when you're a nonprofit, but you have to show that you're raising money for the mission. And so it's really difficult and it's really hard, and at the end of the day it's really worth it. I have to tell you that Peyton, every single year, New York City, LA, and in Miami in particular, all weekend long, we'd go back to our room at night and she would say, and I won't swear on your podcast, but she would say, if we ever think we're effing going to do this again, remind me, I'm never effing doing this again. I'm never, and all weekend long, that's just remind me, I'm never effing doing this again. And then, like a week later, she's like, where are we going next? So it's, and so, yeah, it's pretty remarkable. And we've really enjoyed having you at our events and your community members. We love meeting people. And they, when they come up and they introduce themselves, like, I'm from Veronica's Soberful community. I go, oh, that's really awesome. Thank you for being here.
I want to say from a participant standpoint, I want you to know that lots of us really appreciate that this is no easy thing. That I mean, I've organized tiny events and they're enough to organize an event of that scale. Like it is seen and it is appreciated. And that's the kind of
Yeah.
that's the vibe I get from you guys is that like by Sunday you're like, oh God, thank God it's fun, like we did it, we crossed the finish line, right? We're never, ooh, well, maybe we could. And that little, but I mean, you've kind of given this to the community and the community
Mhm,
doesn't want to give it up.
mhm.
It's a
Yeah, and
wonderful
nor do
thing.
we. Nor do we
No.
really. It's again, even as stressful and hard work as it is, and quite frankly, in the last for Miami in particular, I was more just kind of part of the scenery. I wasn't as involved in the production as I had been. Some aspects I was, but not nearly as much as I had been in LA and New York. So it really was on other people's shoulders. But we couldn't say no to that energy, to kind of creating that energy. We see the benefit of it
Yeah, yeah.
and coming out of it. I mean, I have emails from women who, one in particular, and she was in Miami. Did I meet her? I can't remember if I met her in person. I think I did. But she emailed me before and she said that she couldn't come to New York. She lived in New York City and she was afraid to come to New York. So she purchased the virtual ticket. And she was so blown away by that weekend that she had been sober ever since. And she came to Miami to celebrate in person, kind of that,
Wow.
that idea that event, or an event, that first event had got her going on her path. And we get things like that all the time. People were at in LA, and they've since gone back to school to become an addictions counselor, or all sorts of different things. So we see and we feel the energy and the need for it. And at the end of the day, it's really only in those 3 days where the stress is just like, and it
Yeah.
really is, because we are perfectionists. We want to ensure that everybody's having the very best time, and we've got a lot of moving parts on those events. But yeah,
Yeah,
I expect they'll continue.
I am good. Yeah, I really encourage my people to go because I really want them to, like, I'm telling them till I'm blue in the face that being, sober, it's way more fun. But I want them to have that experience, and that really happens at She Recovers. I have two requests for the next one. There must be dancing. We love to dance, and can Dara be given more mic time because she's hysterical.
Aw.
She makes me laugh. She has very British humor. It's
Mm.
so dry. And every time
Right.
she sort of inadvertently had the microphone, I've been in hysterics. She makes me laugh. Or better still, let's just give her a reality show or something.
Yeah, we've told her that for years, for sure. I mean, and I think, as you know, as she shared in where were we? Miami, she has a fairly recent diagnosis of MS. So
Mm,
she's not even sure that she would be able to do an event like that again. She'll
mm,
certainly be present.
good.
Whether she's working behind the scenes would be another thing. And there will always, as long as Peyton is anywhere near the program, there will be dancing.
Okay, good, 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 good. So let's go back. And how did She Recover start?
Well, in February 2011, I hit the wall. I'd, been in recovery already then. Can never do the math very well backwards, but 35 years. So for over nearly 20 years, I don't remember. Since 1987 is when I first got into recovery, and there's a few kind of asterisks to my recovery. I smoked a lot of pot for the first couple of years, but haven't drank alcohol or done cocaine since 1987. And in 2011, by 2011, I had actually developed another really serious, I think, addiction, and it was to work. I was a
Mm,
workaholic, and
mm-hmm.
I had a consulting company where I was doing consulting work, and I was leading a large research team in government. So I had a full time job in government, and I was teaching part time at the university here. So I was running kind of all three careers at the same time, and it was slightly ridiculous. But what had happened for me is, as I was finishing my PhD in 2005, I was diagnosed. I ended up in the hospital with colon cancer, and I ended up doing a year of chemotherapy. Nearly died, all of that. And at the end of that, I think just to numb, because we're always numbing, right? I was numbing the death of my mother, which had happened in 2000, kind of just still on this. When you're a student, an immature student, also raising kids, you get on this, like, there's just, you're always working, you're always doing something, you're studying, you're writing, you're doing all the things. So I was on this hamster wheel. I couldn't slow down. And I had this sense that I was really behind. All of a sudden, I was 45 years old. I'd been addicted until I was 27. I'd been in recovery. I'd gone back to school for 13 years, and then I'd had cancer for a year. And I was just really trying to, I think now in retrospect and through lots of therapy sessions, really trying to make up for lost time. I felt like I was behind in my life. I should have just been grateful that I was in my life instead of thinking that I was behind. And I recognize that now. And so, yeah, I just worked myself into a corner, and I ended up really, really ill. I was having the same type of symptoms as if I were addicted to drugs or alcohol again. I was blacking out. The relationships around me were falling apart. My husband and I were having a lot of trouble. My daughters, who had moved here to the West Coast to be closer to me because I had cancer, and they were worried about me and how long they might have me. They were saying things like, "Why did we even move here? We saw you more before, and you never have time for us." And it was a real mess, and I couldn't stop. That was kind of I couldn't stop working. And then my body just started giving out. As I said, one day I came home, one week in particular, I burst into tears twice in two different meetings with senior leadership at my day job.
Mm, mm,
I don't remember the first. I don't even know, actually. Even in the moment, I didn't know why I was crying in the first meeting. But in the second one, it was because my executive director looked at me funny.
mm.
And so I burst into tears, had to leave the room, and realized there's something wrong here. I don't, I'm a professional. I don't do things like this. And that same week, on a Thursday afternoon, I pulled into my driveway at the end of a very long day and turned off my car and realized I had no recollection whatsoever of having driven home. And it's a 15-minute drive through downtown. And I just panicked. Like, it was kind of like I was, oh my gosh, I'm here. And how did I get here? And as I sat there, I tried to and what happened today? I couldn't even put my day together. I didn't, I know I was at work. I picked up my Blackberry because I had a Blackberry then. And I looked through, and I had been emailing him. So okay, I was at work, but I had no recollection. I couldn't even remember
Wow.
the emails that I'd sent and received. So I knew something was really wrong. And I phoned in the next day and said that I'm not coming to work today. I think I need a day off. And I went to my doctor, and she basically said, yeah, you're off. And I remember saying something like, okay, I'll take a couple of days. And she said, no, it'll be longer than that. And it ended up being 4 months. So in that 4 months, I started, and this is when I found you, really. I think this was in 2011. I started a blog called Recovering Dawn, and I just started kind of having this conversation with myself about workaholism and how recovering from workaholism would be the same, basically, as it had been from all the other things I'd recovered
Mm,
from. And started having this conversation as a blogger. And then with myself, and then, when you have a blog, sometimes people talk back to you, and that got really exciting. And then I started looking around to see who else is having this blogging, who else is doing this blogging thing and talking about recovery. And over the next year or so, I found you, and I always say you and Jean and the two Julies, right? Julie
Mm.
Elson Height and the other Julie. And so, yeah, I just kind of
Sober
was
mommy,
having
Julie.
sober mom. Was it sober mummy?
Sober mommies. Sober mommy Julie in Boston. Is that the other Julie?
Yes, that's who it
Yeah.
was. I can
Yeah.
remember it was sober mummies. Anyway, so for about 4 months, I did that, just kind of blogged and thought and did therapy and got myself together, stopped doing my consulting, stopped teaching at the university. And after 4 months, I went back to my day job, and I decided that I couldn't continue to blog because blogging took too much time, and I couldn't go back to work and then blog at night, or I'd be back in the same situation I had been in. So my daughter Taryn, young, hip, cooler version of me, said, "Why don't you start a Facebook fan page?" And I was like, "What is that?" And so we did. We started a page and we called it She Recovers instead of Recovering Dawn. Because by that point, I really didn't want it to be all about me anymore. I wanted it to be about the conversation. And that's how She Recovers started. People just continued to have the conversation on Facebook. It was faster. I could just post it was kind of the beginning of the meme years, just post a cool meme or a quote or a pretty picture or a thought that took me only 2 sentences to write. And that was kind of the beginning. And then went back to work for a few months. And we were then in the economic downturn, and in government, they decided that they needed to stop. They suspended our services, and then they decided that they were going to actually cut our service. We were a research team in government, and evidence is always the first thing to go in government. So they shut us down, and they gave me a year severance. And that's when I decided, okay, I really want to make a difference in other people's lives. I want to do more with women and in recovery. I took a recovery coach training, realized I didn't want to be a recovery coach full time. And then at around that same time, Taryn and I decided that we would host a retreat in Mexico. So November 2012, we held our first She Recovers retreat. And last month, we hosted our 50th. And
Wow.
the last for a while under the banner of She Recovers. So our retreats, we've held them all over, mostly in Mexico and here on the West Coast. Now that we're a nonprofit, we're taking a look at the type of offerings we have. And we've determined that we can't have inaccessible retreats for women and fairly inaccessible conferences for women. And we have to focus really on other things. So we're focusing on in-person chapter development, suspending the retreats. The retreats will go on. I've taken them back in Mexico. Taryn and Peyton and I will do Mexico, and Taryn will do Salt Spring. And then everything else related to retreats and the foundation will just kind of go on ice for a while we focus on the in-person chapter development. But yeah, so we were a Facebook page and a retreat program up until about 2016. And then people like you and others said, let's do something bigger than a retreat. Let's get a bunch of us together. And that was when we decided we would host She Recovers in New York City, which was
I was going to ask, how did that
crazy.
leap happen? Because that was felt like a big, I mean, what was that
Yeah.
process like?
Well, it was Annie McCullough. I don't know if you know Annie,
Yeah.
Annie Love, and Sue Donaldson, another woman who was actually local here, and myself, and I think Jane Steele. We were out for dinner and just talked about it, the idea of doing it. And I'd had this idea before that I wanted to do something locally, like something in Victoria, because I'm in Victoria and it's a beautiful destination. I would love for people to, it's 2016. We've been around for 5 years. We've been going to Mexico. We had plans to go to Bali. We'd been in California. I thought, I'd like to do something at home. And so it started off with, we're going to do like a workshop or a day program here in Victoria. And that just kind of turned into most of the people that knew She Recovers were in the United States. Maybe we should pick a city in the US. Maybe it should be New York City. And then we were introduced to Dara, who lives on Long Island, and Peyton, who lived in Ottawa. So they were both East Coast. And so I don't really know exactly when it went from this little one-day thing in Victoria to New York City with Glennon Doyle and Marianne Williamson and Elizabeth Vargas and Gabby Bernstein. But that's what happened. And it was wild.
Wow.
Really wild.
That feels so, I'm really, actually, I love these conversations because they always kind of end up in different things. And we haven't workaholism is definitely we've spoken about that. I definitely have veered into that territory. And I think there's something very much about it's such a what's the word? I've got a perimenopausal brain, so my
Mm,
words just keep going. It's very enticing because it feels so legitimate,
yeah.
and there's a lot of self-worth in that, and money, and but
Yeah.
I've seen I hit burnout when I was about 3 or 4 years sober, and I got insomnia really badly. And I had a roommate at the time, and I remember being up at like 2:30, and I went downstairs to get a drink, and I saw his beer in the fridge, and I'd never noticed it before, just never. And I just thought, a couple of those, I'd go to sleep. And the next thought was, I'm in trouble and I need to get help. And it was
Right.
exactly the same as you. I had a full-time job, and I was trying to start my business in the evenings, and I was working in the evenings and weekends, and my life was very structured, and there was no spontaneity. And resting was a waste of time, relaxing was a waste of time. It was all that mindset.
Hmm.
And it was when it threatened my sobriety that I was scared enough to do whatever it took. And it's it's so, because your story is exactly the same. It's like the fear of letting go of all the work, the fear because then you won't get the things you want, or it won't be the way you want. And you did that, and it's that. And then when you got made redundant and had that year's severance, was where this all came from. And that the same happened for me when I let go of all of that and rested and relaxed and did the things how I wanted. It turned out way better than I could have planned. It's
Yeah.
crazy, isn't it?
I think there's just such a difference between having an intention and being open to something happening and killing yourself
Mm,
trying to get it. And
mm,
for me, I didn't even know really what I was going after. I was just going
mm,
after not stopping. That was my goal, was to
mm,
not
mm.
stop. And to be honest, I still struggle with it. I still struggle with workaholism. I'm much
Yeah.
better at it now because I've, I don't know if I've taught myself or my body's taught me to start feeling it. And when I start feeling a certain way, I know that because it isn't like I'll be really busy with an event like Miami or something or I'm doing because now I'm consulting. I was writing a book and I'm still doing She Recovers work for the foundation. Volunteer, a lot of it's volunteer. And so it doesn't matter what it is, but I'll kind of all of a sudden I'll end up going, okay, it's not like I look and I go, oh, wow, there's a lot going on here. I literally have to start feeling anxiety returns. And like you, I start waking up at 2 and 3 in the morning and I can't shut off my brain. Like it's kind of like if I have to get up and go to the bathroom, which I do, I literally go to the bathrooms going, don't have a thought, don't have a thought, don't have a thought. Like, because
Yeah.
if a thought gets in there, I'm screwed. I'm awake for the next 4 hours. Um, so it still can come. I'm much better at catching it early. And also, the people in my life have a lot less patience with me. So my adult daughters call me out on it. My partner calls me out on it like practically immediately.
Mm,
So it's not as easy for me to do it anymore, and it's not comfortable for me to do it anymore. But it's still the kind of the wiring is still there. The wiring is still
mm,
there for me to get
mm,
kind of wound up in my own stuff. And it's not just
mm,
work, right? That's what I think so few people understand, that workaholism or overworking. You can be an overdoer.
mm,
And it's the same thing. Some people, they may not have paid jobs, but they volunteer themselves into burnout, or
mm,
they caretake themselves into burnout.
mm,
It's a busyaholic is really probably
mm.
a better term for it.
Yeah, it's for me that all comes back down to balance. Is Yeah, as long as I'm practicing balance, there's periods where I can be really busy, but I have to balance that
Yeah.
with periods of rest. And
Yeah.
it's getting the balance right, because there's always things that can be done. There's always people that need to be helped. There's always things that need to be replied to, and that can be never ending. And having boundaries and balance with that. Yeah, I had to learn that in sobriety too. Way into sobriety, I'm still learning it about that, the balance of that. Especially as I'm getting older, I'm noticing my energy is a little,
Totally. Well,
right.
and I love that. The What I've learned about balance for me is I'm never going to be a person who can set my alarm or sit down here in my office at 8 in the morning and work until 4 and then not do anything productive after 4. That's not my balance. My balance might look like, if I have a deadline on a contract job, that I do actually work from 6 in the morning till 8 at night for a few days, and then I take a day off, or that type of thing. So it balances out, but it's not consistently balanced in the same way for me.
So one of the things I'm glad that we are now opening up and hopefully things are normal-ish. And I'm really glad uh, that you're focusing on the She Recovers chapters. Again, when clients work with me, one of the things that I always really ask them to do is to find sober communities and sober support locally. And I encourage them to check out a women's AA meeting, but whatever, if you have Smart Recovery, if it's Buddhist recovery, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And I also, in a big place, there's a chance that there's going to be She Recovers chapter as well. So I really want to see them grow. Tell me about that. Tell me about the chapters and the plans and what they're about.
Well, before COVID, everything was BC. Before COVID, we
After.
already had we have recovery coaches or other professionals, therapists who are also coaches, who did a She Recovers coach designation with us, who were then qualified to host She Recovers sharing circles in their communities. And we had about 28 cities across North America as well. Well, and then one of those was actually in Paris and one in London. And so these were just monthly sharing circles. People just came together, and that just it was a sharing circle, right? Not a therapy group, not even a coaching group, really just a sharing circle where people got together and to connect. And that was kind of where we were going with things, where our coaches were going to have sharing circles. We were a business, not a nonprofit, so they could charge for them. They could make a living, not a living at it, but I mean, they could cover their costs and make some money at it if they chose to. Most of our coaches um, charged very little for the sharing circles, and they never turned anybody away for lack of funds. But then with the pandemic, our model changed completely. We switched over to becoming a nonprofit, a 501c3, which we had applied for before we even knew there was going to be such a thing as COVID. It was really good timing. And so now we're kind of, we want to get into communities, but we don't want only communities who have a coach that can host a sharing circle, which they'll now do for free. We want to be in other communities as well. We want to be able to have raise awareness and public education in communities. We want our community members to do service in their community. We want them to organize activities. And if they have a coach or a She Recovers yoga teacher or a She Recovers professional, which is a new designation we're doing, it's rolling out this fall, so that therapists don't have to become a coach just to become a She Recovers designate, then they can host yoga or sharing circles. So we're just really looking to create community for people. And some chapters will maybe have a knitting circle. It'll really be up to the chapters what they want to do. Others will have a hiking group. We have a lot of hiking groups now. We don't have any chapters yet, but a lot of our community groups, they do hiking. And the idea really is just to establish ourselves in communities across North America and beyond, because we just believe in the power of connection. Obviously, connection is our sole purpose. That's one of our intentions and guiding principles. And we want also for communities to know that recovery exists. So it's an advocacy activity. It's, we plan on doing outreach in all of these communities so that people know where we're at. And because She Recovers is an umbrella over all sorts of different pathways, we think that we're in a good position to establish these chapters, because then we can invite collaboration with other community organizations. So we could have an information night where somebody from Women for Sobriety and somebody from Recovery Dharma and somebody from, like all of those types of things. And also because our focus is not just on sobriety, but really more and more on mental health. We think that we can do a lot in communities to raise awareness about the importance of taking care of our mental health. We also think that if you have an evening session and you're inviting members of the community to come and speak, you might get more show up if you say, come and talk about women's mental health than come and talk about women's addiction problems. So we'll see what we can do. We launched applications. It's a very thorough process. You need 5 people in order to form a chapter. There's 5 roles that need to be filled. So we expect there'll only be a few rolling out in the beginning, which is what we want. We want to kind of refine and treat those as pilots so that we really can understand best, A, what do communities want? What do the people who are running the chapters, what are they able to do? And, what kind of support can the foundation give them?
I love this because it's just such an important part of early sobriety and medium and long term, but particularly early. It's people need the tools and the support, a program, but they really need the community and the
Yeah,
connection, and also to have fun. I mean, when I got sober at 27, there wasn't anything but 12-step programs then,
yeah,
and I really, after a few months, it's like I want to kind of put lipstick on and go out, and to have safe
yeah,
groups to do that with, I
yeah,
think is a game changer. I really, really passionately think that that's so important.
yeah,
Because I think that's sometimes that's a big thing, like having fun and just, whether it's a hike or a coffee or meal or a sharing circle, but with other women who get it, because the conversations are so much deeper.
we don't do small talk very well,
We don't.
right? We kind of just go, "Hi, how are you? What's your name? What's your name? How many abortions have you
How
had?"
was your
"Well, I've had
flight?
3,
Yeah.
2, 1," like, yeah, so it's just insane, and we love that too, and what I should say is that we're also, although we're obviously trying to get the formal chapters set up, we're really here to provide support to communities just to start the other activities. So there's no like the existing, what they used to be sharing circle communities. They're going to go back to having just sharing circles. They may not have a chapter, but as long as they have a coach, a yoga teacher, they can go back to hosting their sharing circles. And anybody can gather together under the She Recovers kind of banner and say, "Can we go for a walk?" So in our She Recovers Together group, which is our big community group of about 11,000 people, there are people in there all the time, and they'll just pop on and say, "Hey, you know what? I live in Denver. Anybody want to get together and go for a hike?" And they gather informally and do that. So it really is just about, you know this. It's, I can't remember. I always want to say Bronfenbrenner, but I never say his name right. But there's this dude whose theory was that when it comes to youth and adolescents, that they only need one adult in their life
Yeah. Hmm.
as a protective factor
Yeah.
that will influence how they do in life. And I think, I'm a researcher. If I had time to actually do studies like this, I would want to do the study that looked at women in recovery only need one other
Mm,
woman in recovery to do
mm,
really well and to influence how
mm,
things are going to turn out for
mm,
them, to have that one protective factor. I see it play out in front of me over
mm.
and over and over again all of the time.
So you're going to focus on the chapters. You're going to have another big event. Anything else planned down the pipe?
Yeah, so Chicago will take place at the end of September. We haven't officially announced that, but I mean this will be past when we've officially announced it, I think. And this one will probably have happened depending on when this podcast comes out. But we're starting our annual fundraiser event. Will be in October, and it's called Movement Equals Medicine. And so think
Mm,
about the Run for the Cure and all the
mm-hmm,
other
mm,
organizations that have runs and walks. We're going to have a movement event where we're going to encourage people to do 108 minutes of exercise of some sort, of some movement, and they don't have to do it themselves. They can do a relay. They can have 10 of them, each do 10 minutes. And it'll be a fundraiser for the foundation and also raise public awareness about the importance of movement in mental health recovery. So that's happening. I think those are the big ones.
fantastic. So, and then in all of that, you did find time to write a book. Tell us about
Did.
your book.
I did. I don't know what happened there. Well, we all have books in us, right? I know. I'm
Yeah.
sitting here. Actually, I can look at your book right from where I'm sitting.
Oh.
And in fact, I'm pretty sure that one of my daily meditations talks about my friend Veronica Valley from Soberful. Yes, it does.
Oh.
So, and I don't remember what date, but it's in there somewhere. You'll have to get the book.
Oh well, look, not only we'll get the book, we will be using it in Sober for Life for sure. Because yeah,
Awesome.
love it.
Great. I love it. I have a book in me. The book that I thought I was going to write was not this book. The book that I wanted to write, or that I'm going to write, it just keeps changing. But it is kind of my thoughts on recovery from all the things and all the
Mm,
ways. And so that book
mm,
is in me, and that's what I pitched to Hazelden, I had another book deal with Hazelden a few years ago, and then I decided I wasn't going to do the book because my daughter was giving birth and I wanted to be there for her. And it was kind of a workaholic thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm either going to do this book or I'm going to be available to my daughter when she has her
Yeah.
first child. And I chose my daughter. And so we've always talked about me doing a book. And then I kind of pitched them this other book, and that looked like that was going to happen. And then one day, Andrea, my editor, popped up and she said, "Hey, we'd really love you to do a daily meditation book." Because the daily meditation books that Hazelden has now for women, and most of them are written by Karen Casey, and they're wonderful. And I've had them through my whole recovery, and they're beautiful, but they're very 12-step focused. And they're not inclusive of other things that we're healing from. So they asked if I wanted to write something that was about recovering from all the things in all the ways. And so that's what I did. I wrote, I thought I had to write 365 daily meditations, about 200 words each. And then Andrea said, no, 366, because we have to have leap year in there.
Oh.
And I basically started writing when did I start? In March. I started in March and I finished last Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
It was, it was kind of a real process. But the way I look at this book is it's 366 reflections that I have on all sorts of different areas of recovery, from I look back kind of on my life. So it incorporates some of my story, but really little bits. I use I use we, I use you. And it's just thoughts that I share regularly and that go run through my head. You know what it's like. We've been doing this for a while, right? I was
Little things
27
you just,
too.
yeah.
And there's just things that I feel and I believe, and they're always shifting and shaped and being shaped differently. But right now, I think that the 366 things that I've said in this book are things that I firmly believe and that I think are helpful. I hope are helpful.
I can't wait. This will 100% be part of my program, and I will be getting this out to. Yeah, I can't. You have a lot of wisdom, and this feels perfect. I'm. I hope the other book comes as well. I'm sure it will. But
yeah, it's coming. It's coming. And I love my cover so much. I love my cover.
I saw it. Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah,
so beautiful.
Really gorgeous. Yeah, really gorgeous.
Very excited about it.
So,
and also would love, one day maybe come down to your part of the world. We could do a book reading and signing together.
Sure, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do a thing. Would be fun. Yeah, let's do it for sure. Before we close, I'm interested in your thoughts. I mean, we've both been around a long time. We've seen massive changes. Back in the day, we were sober when you didn't talk about it. You weren't public. There wasn't social media. What do you? I think that you can that this real change has happened. You can relate it to Instagram. I think it's very related to the rise of Instagram and people being very public. What do you think the next 10 years could look like for the recovery movement? I've seen some real changes, and I'm wondering what you think.
Well, gosh, I think that's a really good question. I've just been so busy thinking about today and the past recently. One of the things that I hope for, and I hope that our foundation is a part of it. We have plans to do something called She Recovers the Next Generation. And that is really to focus on younger women. So I think the next 10 years, there's going to be a few things. I think right now, I feel like it's a lot of the voices in the movement are the 30s, 30 to 60 I'm 62. So, okay, me too. So 30 to whatever, 30 to 70. Oh my gosh, what's happening here? 30s to 60s. A lot of it's, moms and that type of thing. I think, so I see the next 10 years as really being about identity-based groups breaking out and really making a difference and making an impact. So the younger women, the older women, BIPOC women, LGBTQ, I just think that the next 10 years should actually see more diversity in the recovery movement, which is sorely needed, in my view. Right? We need to see other faces and other people's experiences and different ages, different abilities, all of those things. So that's my wish for it. I feel like it's going to happen because I see the beginnings of it. I mean, we have identity-based groups and She Recovers. So we already have portions of our community gathering in identity-based groups. So I hope that's it. I think that I think we're gonna get a little clearer in the recovery movement. We need to get clearer on some of these really edgier kind of modalities that people are talking about. Like we got to figure out how we're going to talk about and deal with psychedelics and
Yeah.
um, I don't know that we'll ever resolve the abstinence versus non-abstinence issue, but I hope in the next 10 years we get to a place where we can fully comprehend that people have their own pathways, and I can have my very own beliefs and thoughts about it. I can tell you exactly what I
Yeah.
think you ought to do, and I can tell you the only thing that worked for me.
Mm,
But I hope the next 10 years really does see us start walking the talk, which is all pathways. I actually
mm,
was interested today to see a new video and a new mission vision statement come out from Hazelden about how they're changing their views. And I'm like, I wonder what that means. I really want to dig down into that. And because we have a close relationship with them, I look
mm.
forward to figuring that out. But um, yeah, there's so much more work to be done yet. What do you think? I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I, what I want, and one of the things I'm working on is putting together a TV show. I want, we live in this world, so we see all of the Instagram accounts, there's podcasts, there's this big quit lit genre. What I want, Dawn, is to, I've always had quite a rebellious, I want to smash that cultural belief system that alcohol's the best way to have
Right.
fun. And you can't tell people that alcohol's bad for them. It doesn't work. We all know. I mean, everyone, the
Yeah.
information's out there. We have to show them that sobriety is way more fun, way more interesting, way more expansive. That's what I want to do with this TV show is that we have to you probably had the same thing. I don't really have it now, but back in the day when I was 28 and going clubbing and drinking Diet Coke, people looked at me with pity and like, oh, you poor, like, and after about, I was about 2 years sober when I was out at a concert with some friends and I looked at them and thought, I'm having more fun than you are. And it's I like to be I use that as a hashtag. I want to be provocative. Like, don't look at me and think I'm missing out, that I'm like having this poor sad lonely
Yeah.
time, deprived, missing out. Like, you're the one who don't look,
Sure.
that doesn't look like I want to do more. It's like alcohol always has a place, we can't get rid of it, but I want people, generally the general public, to know that an alcohol-free lifestyle, it's like just as valid as being gluten-free and vegan, and no one bats an eyelid about that anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas 30, 40 years ago, you were a weird hippie person.
Right.
I want to see that change in the next 10 years. And I want to do it for my kids, especially being
Right.
British. In England, we still have such a terrible, like the binge drinking. It's like adults drink. You just got to figure out managing it. And it's
Yeah.
just carnage. And it's just, it's that it's the emperor's new clothes.
Right.
I want to be able, I want us, I don't mean me, but I want us to go, look, the emperor's stark bollock naked, mate. And for
Yeah.
everyone to go, oh God, yeah, that's what I want, Dawn.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I'm down with that too, for sure. I
Yeah.
think smashing stigma is, to me, it's just always a part of everything that we do, right? And changing the narrative is got to be part of that too. I guess that's what we try to do with the foundation. That's what we try to do with our events. It's what we try to do with what we try to do with our retreats. What we'll continue to do as individuals with our retreats is just really, yeah, and just creating in-person activities and opportunities to show them that. But I love it. Like, well, I can't wait to hear more about this TV show. Is it going to be like a drama
No, reality show
or a
where
reality show?
we take people who are questioning. People have done a couple of dry Januaries, that kind of thing. Not rock bottom. Those are the people. That's what the public have seen. An alcohol
Right.
problem is the rock bottom, serious intervention, have to go to rehab. I want to work with the people who are just sort of questioning, but
Mm,
don't want to stop because of the belief system that they will miss out if
right.
they do. And I want to take them on a journey that shows everything they think about sobriety is wrong.
Oh,
That that
wow.
that we go and have experiences. We do things and actually sober doesn't mean boring. It's the complete opposite. That smash their beliefs, and then they can make the choice. Then they can
I love it.
decide. So that's
Oh,
kind of, I feel we have to show people, we have to demonstrate, like, and going back to She Recovers, that's why I always encourage my people to go to that, because it's like, we're not all sitting there with a glass of water in the corner going, "Ugh." We are laughing, we are crying, we are dancing, we are jumping in swimming pools in our underwear. Like, are
yeah,
you freaking serious?
yeah,
Like, we are hugging strangers on the Sunday like we have known them our entire lives.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in that whole weekend, you are smashing all of these preconceptions that people
yes,
have, that
yeah,
sober is boring, you can't have fun, you can't socialize. They're smashed to pieces. I want to take, I want us to continue to take that further and do
wonderful.
that in the general public. So
I love it. Well, good. Let me know how we can help.
thank you. Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here, Dawn. Tell people where they can find you and She Recovers, and when the book is coming
Right.
out and all that kind of stuff.
So you can find She Recovers at www.sherecovers.org, and that will give us, we have daily meetings, free meetings twice a day. We have identity-based groups on the weekends. Information about Chicago will be there. Information about anything that we're doing will be there. All of our chapters, local chapter, our community groups that are already in existence are up there. Um, I will have a website so maybe by this time. So it'll be Dawn Nickel, DAWNNICKEL.com. And my daughter Taryn, who's the other founder of She Recovers, you can find her at TarynStrong.com. And my book will be out on February 21st, 2023. And you can
And
find that where all books are. It's available for pre-sale now.
oh, okay, great. Please, 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 everybody, order your book on pre-sale. I will do the same thing. Pre-sales really, really help. And this is just, I know it's just going to be essential for your recovery toolbox. So it's just a given. Go order it now, everyone. And then we will all be super
Thank you.
excited in February when it arrives. Dawn, thank you so much. I'm so glad.
Thank you,
I've been
Veronica.
wanting to do this for a while. I
I know.
when we were talking about this, I said to my assistant, I said, "Oh, don't bother her before April. There's no just don't. It's no point. Let's get her afterwards when she's had,
Yeah.
she's gonna be too busy."
Well, I've been looking forward to it. So thank you very much. I'm glad we finally did it.
Yeah. Thanks,
And thank you
everybody.
for all that you do for so many.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Let us know what you think about the episode. You can reach us both on social media. I'm at Veronica J. Valley on Instagram. And please order Dawn's book, and we'll be back next week.